Welcome to this episode of With Priscilla. I have the honor of having Eric Vickrey here, who, which I found out, balances a full time career in emergency medicine, and you have a deep passion for researching and writing about baseball. You're a member of the Society for American Baseball Research, SABR, where he's contributed numerous articles, and his work shines a light of forgotten moments, resilient players, and pivotal eras in the game. You have three books: Runnin' Redbirds, it's the world champion 1982 St. Louis Cardinals. That's your debut book, celebrating the speed, grit, and magic of that iconic championship team. And then the two books that we're going to be covering today: Season of Shattered Dreams, this one right here, Postwar Baseball, the Spokane Indians, and a tragic bus crash that changed everything. And then this one, Before they wore Dodger blue, Tommy Lasorda and the greatest draft class in baseball history, which kind of like it's still current because the Dodgers were just recognized, what, like a week ago, of having the number one farm system, which includes scouting. So it's kind of perfect timing for us talking about this right now.
Yeah, exactly.
And they love to hate the Dodgers, but the Dodgers are winning, 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 not just on the field, but all around as well. So that's definitely gonna
Yes.
be fun to talk about. Um, so today we're gonna be focusing on these two. So thank you so much, Eric, for joining us. And I'm excited to hear and just about your books, about current baseball too. Um, but I wanna just highlight you for a moment. How did you go from medical to a baseball historian?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, I've been a full-time, PA for about 23 years, going back long before that, have been a lifelong baseball fan, so I've always had a passion for the game and have always had an interest in writing as well, and it was really during the COVID pandemic that I really started writing seriously, and contributing articles like you mentioned, during that very nice introduction, through SABR. So yeah, I had some downtime because I was, working shifts, and then I'd come home and there was really nothing else to do. So during the pandemic, I started writing and really enjoyed the process of researching and digging into the game's past. And uh, as I started writing these articles and gaining more experience, more confidence, I eventually decided to tackle a book on my childhood team, which was the 1980s Cardinals, and focusing on that 1982 team. So that's kind of how I got my start.
I love that. And so let's talk about um the season of Shattered Dreams. I love that because as a baseball fan, I'm drawn to any form of history. It doesn't We're Dodger fans, but I'm not necessarily just drawn to Dodger history. I'm just drawn to players, athletes, teams, anything that is shared. And I didn't know about this and post-war, and it was very insightful, but also kind of, like, sad because it's, like, the time of era, of obviously, war isn't fun, and there's a lot of, families, everything involved, and especially players. And I wanna mention that you won a 2024 Casey Award for this, so congratulations on that.
Thank you. I was actually, I should clarify, nominated as a finalist. I didn't
A
actually win the
finalist,
award,
right.
so I don't wanna
Okay,
take
well, to
credit.
me to me, that's kind of like a winning. I mean, I just really wanna acknowledge that's amazing.
Yeah, it was a big
Um,
honor for sure.
very. So this book also centers on the 1946 Spokane Indians and the devastating bus crash that claimed 9 lives, the deadliest accident in American pro sports history. What drew you to this tragic story?
Yeah, well, like you, I'm a huge baseball fan and had never heard of this story before, and, it was while I was actually researching a totally unrelated topic, for one of those articles for SABRE that I came across in the newspaper archives mention of this, kinda horrific bus crash, and I was kind of was drawn to the story. I'd go to the baseball reference page and look at the team statistics, but I really couldn't find much information about the individual players. And I kind of, through writing biographies, am kind of drawn to the human side of stories and kind of combining that with my love for baseball. So I was really interested in who these guys were. I knew it was a really interesting time in our country's history because it was right after the war, and a lot of these guys had just returned from fighting in the war and were just resuming their baseball careers when this bus accident happened. So I really wanted to dig into it and kind of do their story justice. And spent about a year researching and writing that book.
Wow, a year? This
Mhm.
seemed like it took years for you to just the amount of information. Um, and I did a couple little notes of you mentioned there were members of a minor league, as you mentioned right now, team called the Spokane Indian. Wait, let me skim through this. Is it me? But do I recall that you mentioned that some of the players had passed away?
Yeah, so 9 players
Yes.
from the team were killed as a result of the accident. There were 16 players on the bus that day, and one of the players got off the bus in mid Washington while they were kind of driving across the state, and then the accident happened near Snoqualmie Pass, which is about 50 miles east of Seattle. Um, that accident occurred in June of 1946.
And what was the transition and can you share the story of that impact? Obviously, losing life is such an impact, but specifically within the baseball world and that team, because I think there was like moving around with other players
Yeah, that was
to
a
fill in.
really interesting part of the story is that, this accident occurred and it made newspaper headlines across the country at the time. So, I think everyone in the country, in that era knew about the accident. And what really struck me, as remarkable was that a week later, they started, playing games again. Um, they're 9 players, of course, were killed, 6 others were injured, and the 2 players happened to have driven separately in a convertible, and so those really were the only 2 players left from the team after the accident. So what the owner did is he started sort of, rounding up any players he could find, so, like, semi-pro players or players that had been released by other organizations, and he did this just days after the accident. And, just about a week later, they started playing games again. Even the team trainer, started suiting up and playing games for the team. Uh, and the way it was described in newspaper articles was that the owner of the team, who owned a cigar shop, this was also like a business, the minor league baseball team that he operated, and so he really needed to get the team up and running again as, just to make money and, keep his business going. So that was really the impetus for, starting the season, so soon after the accident.
And how was that transition and was it well received? Was it received as too soon or was it received as a good way of honoring them?
Yeah, 2 of the 2 players who had driven separately that started playing again, I think they were kind of torn. In later interviews, they described it as, they just wanted to kinda get the season over with. On one hand, they wanted to honor their fallen teammates by getting back out there and playing, but, at the same time, it was very, di as you can imagine, very difficult for them. And these were actually 2 pitchers, and these guys were, like, pitching on, like, 2 or 3 days rest just, because there were no other, pitchers, and those guys both ended up blowing out their elbows as a
Oh,
result of
yeah.
this accident. So even though they weren't in the accident, they ended up getting affected, in other ways. Um but there was an outpouring of support from across the country. People, sent in donations. They started a fund to raise money for the, victims and their families, and they raised over $100,000, which kind of, if you equate it to today's money, would be like over $1 million, which was divided
Wow.
up to these families, months after the accident.
That's amazing. And then, so post war America was a time of rebuilding and optimism, yet this tragedy shattered dreams. So, how how did the country, I guess, and baseball was that like a shift in general? And obviously within the community.
Yeah, that was 46 was a really interesting year in baseball because you had a lot of the minor leagues had shut down during the war.
Mhm.
And of course, thousands of players, minor leaguers, and hundreds of major leaguers went away to fight in the war. So in 46, all these guys had come back and were trying to resume their baseball careers. All these minor leagues started up again. You had other younger players who were kind of up and coming. So you had kind of a mix of former soldiers and then these kind of up and coming players. So that was kind of the landscape of baseball. And at the same time, the Dodgers had signed Jackie Robinson, Roy Campanella,
Um,
and Don Newcomb that year. So they were in the process of integrating baseball. These guys were playing in Montreal and Nashua, New Hampshire. So that was a really interesting time across baseball across the country. And then, yeah, this accident was really a sort of tragedy in the midst of otherwise a, a time for celebration that the war is over and all these guys were getting to resume the game they loved.
and is there it's kinda hard because I don't wanna give away this entire book. I want to kinda give little, like, cliffhanger nuggets, but what impacted you the most of doing this story?
Mm.
What was your big takeaway?
I think really just getting to know the players on a pretty intimate level. A couple of the families of two of the players who died in the accident had kept letters from the players that they had sent to other family members. And so they had these sort of scrapbooks and boxes of letters and photos that had been sitting in storage for decades and decades. And so, kind of getting to read those letters and getting a sense of what was going on in these guys' minds, that was really, for me, a moving part of researching and writing the book. And it really made me want to, do these guys justice and bring their story to light and tell it in a respectful way. So that was really impactful for me.
Oh, well, you did them justice, and I'm sure I mean, I could only imagine just going through the letters and talking to the family, how probably would have got me a little bit emotional and stirred that passion to really want to honor them and their families. So I think you did amazing, and I really want to encourage people to pick up this book.
Yeah, thank
It's
you.
su- it's such a I mean, you don't even have to be a lover of baseball. I think if you just love hearing stories and of lives of the past, and I think it's a great one. So I want people to pick up that one. And then you went and did this one, and we mentioned earlier that they kind of overlap each other with the Spokane Indians. So how did that come about?
Yeah, so while I was researching Season of Shattered Dreams, I really dug into the history of the Spokane Indians. They started playing as a franchise in the early 1900s, so their history goes back a long ways in Spokane, and they're actually called the Indians in honor of the Spokane tribe, and that's the city derives their name from the tribe of Spokane Indians, and so they have the team name that even continues today. They're still called the Indians. So I really dug into the history of the franchise, and what I learned in doing so was that in 1970 they had one of the best minor league teams of all time, and it was a list of guys I all knew and collected their baseball cards growing up in the 80s, but really didn't know that all these guys had played together in 1970 under Tommy Lasorda. So we can go through the list of names, but it was
Yeah.
guys like Bill Buckner, Steve Garvey, Bobby Valentine, Davey Lopes, Bill Russell, Charlie Huff. Just this laundry list of baseball superstars. And so I really was kind of intrigued, like just like I was with the 46 Spokane Indians. So after I was finished writing Season of Shattered Dreams, I took a few months off and then said, "Okay, what's next?" And decided to really dive into that. And what I also learned was that all these players came from one draft class, and that was the 1968 draft class of the Dodgers. So I thought it'd be cool to kinda investigate how the Dodgers pulled off such a remarkable draft, how they accumulated so much talent in one, year, and then all these guys coming up together under Lasorda. I thought it would make for a cool story.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very cool story and very in-depth, which I love. You give a lot of information, and I think my one of my takeaways when even at the first start of reading it, um, you were talking I put again, I have, like, lots of notes. Um, it was about signing just about the relationship with, where is it? With Willie Crawford.
Oh, yeah, uh-huh.
And there's a part where it says so it was when he was, um, meeting with all the teams, and I think it was like you said it was like a 24-hour or 48-hour time span, and because Tommy Lasorda showed up to Clara's father's funeral, which I thought was kind of funny and ironic how he was set up up front and was kind of like a guest speaker you shared, and
Yeah,
he didn't know, and, like and when you talk, I can really visualize I'm a visual, so even though I don't know Tommy Lasorda, you know how you can if you know the sport and you know the people, you can pick up their character and their person.
totally, yeah.
I could see him looking around like, who's the guest? And, it was him. And then he was asked to speak, and he spoke lovely, of course. And, but during the time of the the coaches talking to this potential sought-after player, the mother, Clara, refused to, as you say, to let Willie sign, citing the promise she made to Lasorda and how touched she was that he came to her father's funeral. And Tommy Lasorda was the last to speak with Willie. Yeah, go ahead.
Exactly, yeah, yeah, so this was in 1964, and it was a
Mhm,
year before baseball instituted the draft, so at
mhm.
that time, like, any team could sign any player, so, scouts would spend, like, months or even years kind of forming relationships with players and their families, in order to kinda get in the good graces and hopefully sign them, and that's what Lasorda had done with Willie Crawford. He and another scout, Kenny Myers, they'd go to Willie Crawford's house and take them dinner and take him to Dodgers games and really got to know his family. So, yeah, Lasorda, showed up at his grandfather's, funeral a week before Willie's graduation, from high school, and that really touched, Willie's mother, Clara, and then, so when it came time to for Willie to choose what team he wanted to sign for, even though Charlie Finley had offered him double the money to sign with the, Kansas City A's, uh, Willie and his mother decided to, honor their, relationship with Tommy Lasorda and sign with the Dodgers.
Because it wasn't just the funeral, it was also before that. Do you wanna share that? Like, the relationship that he had built and
Yeah,
the time he invested into him too.
exactly, yeah, yeah, Willie was a big high school star, in the Los Angeles area, and so Tommy would, uh, show up to all his games. They would take him pastrami sandwiches and really became almost like family member to Clara and Willie. Yeah, and just kind of developing a relationship. And what was interesting is when baseball adopted the draft a year later, suddenly that didn't matter anymore. Scouts, you could spend a lot of time with a player, but if your team didn't have the top overall draft pick, another team could sign that player. So it really changed. Instituting the draft really changed the way scouts worked, and but Tommy was, as you can imagine, very persuasive and convincing, and he also signed another Tommy Hutton, who is now a broadcaster for the Marlins, but he had a nice career, and so Tommy had a good eye for talent, but he was also very convincing, a very good talker, and yeah. So when he's at Willie Crawford's grandfather's funeral, and the preacher asked him to come up and say the eulogy, that Tommy was such a good speaker and so outspoken that he was able to really kind of capture the moment and give this amazing eulogy kind of on the spur of the moment.
I love that. And the reason why I mentioned that specifically that moment of why Clara told her son to hold off and wait and give Lasorda the opportunity was because it was about relationships. And I think that's a key word with the Dodgers is they really hone in on relationships. And it's not just within the players and their families, because we know like they invest so much into the wives and the kids of the players. But every time I hear of outside of the players and their families, I hear from, like, staff, or people who affiliated with the organization, they just speak nothing but good and of the organization. So, to me, it just hones in on the relationship part that is so
Yeah.
important to the organization.
That's a great point. Yeah, they have had that tradition going back for decades and into like the 40s and 50s when they signed all these legendary players like Sandy Koufax and Don Drysdale, Maury Wills, and the list goes on and on. They just had an amazing ability to foster relationships, uh, sign these amazingly talented players, and really build a dynasty after they moved to Los Angeles.
Definitely. And then another thing on page 61, um, you shared about, I don't want to butcher the name. Is it Campini's? Is that
Campenis.
Campinis? And it mentions, it's like the whole page. I don't want to read the whole page, but it just basically encourages or shares how he had like psychological tactics during salary
Yeah.
negotiations, which I really loved. Like one of them, he said that he recommended a similar strategy when verbalizing the amount. So he would say $10,000, but quickly with an air of triviality so that it sounds like a very small sum. And then he would say, "Now say $5,000. Say it slowly. Say it feelingly. Say it as if you are tremendously impressed with the hugeness of the amount." But also there was, like, parts of where the yes response. So you're asking questions to stimulate a yes response. So it's kind of like that psychological, uh,
Yeah,
preparing them, which is, like, very intriguing
totally,
and
yeah, yeah.
approach of how much thought and there's so much more, but it's, how much thought and the process that goes on into their strategy.
Yeah, that was really cool, to find that. Actually, found that in, the Baseball Hall of Fame sent me a file of, like, letters and, internal documents that the Dodgers scouting department had, so, yeah, that all came from an internal document that Al Campanis, who was the scouting director, sent to all his scouts to kind of encourage them to use these, like you said, psychological tactics, to help sign players, and, I think that it's kinda like, I guess when you go to buy a car, the salesman has, certain techniques they use, and, so the Dodger Scouts definitely, utilize some of this kinda similar, tactics to kind of, yeah, make a signing bonus maybe sound more impressive than it really was, and, yeah, I asked them a bunch of questions that would get them saying yes and yes and yes, and that way when they finally asked, "Okay, will you sign the contract?" That kind of momentum building of answering yes would carry over was kind of the thought behind that. So yeah, I thought that was a lot of fun to dig that up and a cool part of the Dodgers strategy back in the day.
Yes, and then it makes me wonder, like, did they have a psychologist? Did they have, like, some experts? Were they friends or married to someone that had that mindset or that thinking skill set to share with them how to get these answers and how to get these players?
Yeah, that's a great question. I do know from my research that Tommy Lasorda, for instance, was really big into psychology
Mhm.
and like the power of positive thinking, and he read a lot of sort of like self help books on positive thinking and developing like a positive mindset, and then how that can translate into success. So I think these guys did kind of do their homework uh, and learn kind of the psychology of baseball. I don't know if they had actual psychologists, but I do know that they did a lot of their own research and
Yeah. I
so
mean, you could tell because that doesn't just come out of nowhere, you
yeah,
know?
yeah, it's definitely not necessarily like common sense. It's they really kind of studied the art of psychology and used that to their advantage.
Yes, definitely. And then you also mentioned, there is even it goes on towards, like, page 96 where Lasorda established a set of team rules early on, which I kinda thought was funny, this part. Um So, in part of one of his strategies was Lasorda enforced midnight curfew by performing occasional room checks. The method wasn't foolproof, however. And then, after hearing rumors that a few guys were burning the midnight oil, the skipper turned to an old manager's trick. He recruited an elderly gentleman who worked the night shift at the hotel and asked him to ask players for their autograph. So I thought that was such so that way, and then obviously the ball was turned into Lasorda, and Lasorda knew who was out past curfew,
Yeah,
and the players never picked up on how he found out, which it's kind of like a little mom trick right there
yeah,
of being ahead of the kids, so to say, and
exactly.
knowing, like, having eyes behind their back type of thing. So, I thought that was very funny and such that was a pretty good strategy right there.
Yeah, totally. That was a pretty slick move by Lasorda. These young ball players who were mostly like teenagers, 18, 19 years old. They'd come home or come back to the hotel, and they just thought this old guy was like a big fan and wanted their autograph. So they were just happily like sign their name on the ball, and then the next day the clubhouse boy would go and pick up the ball and take it to Lasorda, and then he had a list of a ball a list on a ball of the players who had broke curfews. Yeah, just ingenious on Lasorda's part.
It is, and he was pretty strict too. I mean, given the curfew, do you wanna share on that? Like, his reasoning and all of that?
Yeah, he was pretty strict. Definitely made his players adhere to curfew. Really encouraged them to be fan friendly. There's another story in there about how Lasorda, when he was a kid, was kind of shunned by a major league player who he asked for their autograph, and the player refused. And then Lasorda kept that in his mind throughout his baseball career. So anytime a kid wanted his autograph, he was more than willing to do so. And that's like one of the first thing he told his players in rookie ball was, sign autographs for players. He was very strict about. They had extra like morning practice on home games. Bobby Valentine told me that if a player's girlfriend was in town visiting, he would hold like extra practices so that so that the player would have, like, less time to spend with the girlfriend. So, yeah, he was pretty strict and all
Oh
all
my
about
god.
baseball.
I love that, and then that story you were sharing about signing autographs, that was another one that I thought and I actually shared this with my husband, and he laughed, because he's a big Dodger fan too, he played baseball, so any tidbits I can give him on baseball that he doesn't know is like a win for me,
Yeah.
and, because he knows a lot, but he loved this story, and it says, let me skip there. It says, "On one day during the 1949 season, Lasorda was pitching for the Spinners against the Augusta Yankees when he had heard the public address announcer introduce the next batter as Buster Maynard. Lasorda could hardly believe his ears when he was in 8th grade, a time in his life when he believed major leagues walked on water. He asked Maynard for an autograph, and Maynard brushed him off, and so he never forgot that that feeling of disappointment. So then here he is, getting ready to pitch to him, and Lasorda ends up Lasorda went into his windup and directed the first pitch at Maynard's noggin. Maynard dove out of the way, got back on his feet, and ducked back in. Lasorda buzzed Maynard twice more. How and then eventually Maynard, after the game, asked him why he threw at him, and Lasorda said that the story behind of that of being denied an autograph. So I just thought that was so funny, and also, like, that is what we know Tommy to be, you know?
Totally.
Um, and with it's like he reigns true no matter the age, and which is amazing, he just he is who he is,
Mhm.
and but he stuck to that, and it was also pretty funny story.
Yeah, no,
Mhm.
Lasorda was never one to back down from a fight,
Wow.
going back to his childhood, and, uh, he definitely held grudges, and some of his players told me that, once he got his mind, wrapped around something, like, that was it. There was, like, no changing his mind. He was very, um, sort of, one-dimensional in that way, but yeah, he held a grudge for this guy and then got a chance to take revenge on him later. I love that story as well.
I did too, and it was so unexpected, it seemed to him for him too, like, he was so surprised
Yeah.
and shocked that he was up, that player that he asked was up. So, I just thought, like, you can't make things up sometimes,
Mhm.
and it's just so funny how that happens.
Yeah, and then for him to sort of use that story from his own career and then translate that to his own players, saying, "If you, blow this kid off, don't sign his baseball, he's gonna go through his life hating you, or maybe someday he's gonna face you
And
and,
then
uh,
hit you.
and hit you in the head." So
Yes, yeah, I love how he turned that into such a positive life lesson
mhm.
and to share with the players of which I mean, I don't wanna toot the Dodgers' own horn, but because there's a lot of great organizations and players, but I really think, another part of the Dodgers being an excellent organization is that they really, um I mean, I don't know their strategy or their process, but it seems like the players are all I mean, like right now, the Dodger the Dodgers have like A-star players, right? There's so many big names,
Mhm.
but they still play as a team.
Totally,
There's
yeah.
no one main like, Otani doesn't just reign and everybody's below, or Freddie Freeman. Like, there's so many big names that there can easily be this ego thing or pride, whatever, "I'm number 1 of this team," but they all speak wonderful of each other. I mean, if there was any issue that they had with each other, we would never know.
Yeah,
Um
that's true,
so
yeah.
I think it's really great of the organization and that also plays in with, like, Tommy Lasorda and a lot of the managers, just building that relationship with them and really creating this respectable environment. At least that's what it seems on the outside.
Yeah, that's exactly right, and that's something Lasorda kinda introduced to the game is that he would, like, take his players out for breakfast and for dinner and take them bowling, and that was really a shift because prior to that, uh, baseball managers were very almost like it was kinda like the military. They were very, strict, but he kinda broke down, those kind of barriers between player and manager and formed relationships, so it was really more like a family and that he kind of carried that into his big league career as well. I'm thinking of like the 1980s Mets teams. They were famously like there was a lot of infighting. Like after games, everyone would just kind of go their separate ways. But yeah, the Dodgers have always kind of had this more of a family environment and played very well as a team, like you said.
And can you talk about, just scouting in general? What is the process of, um becoming a scout? And I know you're not one, but you've obviously like researched a ton. Like, do you find a particular character in these scouts that are common where it's like, okay, yeah, that's why they went into being a scout or anything like that?
Yeah, I think, most of my research for this book was looking at the scouts from the 1960s and 70s who contributed to this amazing draft class. And what I learned from those guys is that they were mostly older guys who had previously played. A lot of them had played in the Dodgers organization, and most of them really didn't have like successful careers. Maybe they got just like a cup of coffee and played for a season or two Some of them didn't even make it to the big leagues. They just kind of flamed out in the minor leagues. But they definitely all had a real passion for baseball, which I think as a scout you have to, because especially back then they weren't making very much money at all. They would spend inordinate amount of time on the road. One of the scouts I profile in the book, Leon Hamilton, his son told me that he would see him for like 2 weeks out of the year, and otherwise he'd be on the road, looking for
Wow.
players and scouting. I think things are a lot different now than they were back then. There's certainly more video and analytics, and so I don't think scouts are having to spend like months and months on the road driving around. There's a lot more information that's shared through more technology and through advancements like that. So, um, but I think in order to be a scout, you really have to love the game. First of all, you have to really be uh, dedicated, and these guys are going back to then as well as currently. These guys are really under the radar. Like no one really knows can cite names of scouts like you can players or front office personnel. So these guys are very much under the radar, and but they certainly contribute, and for the Dodgers contributed to their success over many decades.
Yeah, I think correct me if I'm wrong, is Andre Ethier kind of a scout right now for the Dodgers?
I think he is. Yeah, I think I did
Okay.
hear that.
Yeah. So that's kinda neat seeing that because I like, you're right, they're kind of like little undercover agents in baseball. You just never know. My husband and my daughter went to Point Loma Nazarene we're in San Diego, and we like going they have a beautiful baseball stadium or the field, it
Hmm.
overlooks the ocean. So
Okay.
it's kind of like you get a ocean view and a baseball game, and the tickets are like $7.
Wow, that sounds
So
amazing.
yeah, and so we obviously like going just to hang out, it's like our little date thing, and one game, we always happen to sit next to player families too, and they fill us in on the players and who's what and all of this stuff, and then I noticed this gentleman sitting close with his laptop notes and kind of business casual, and I told my husband, I go, "I bet you that's a scout." Because like you just said, they're kind of this under the radar, you don't know who's who, so,
Yeah.
he just went in, did his thing, and then left early. So, it's kinda
Uh-huh.
neat seeing that side, even though you don't know what's going on.
Yeah, totally, and I think the game has in some ways, teams have gotten away from scouting, as much, but I think the really successful organizations have a good blend of scouting and analytics and, um, you know, kind of, have a blend of those 2 to be successful is the ideal situation.
Completely. And so, again, do you wanna discuss the merge of these 2, of Spokane Indians also being in both?
Yeah, yeah. So, all these players from the '68 draft, and it's still considered the greatest draft class of all time that the Dodgers pulled off that year. Again, it was like Bobby Valentine, Bill Buckner, Tom Paciorek, Steve Garvey, Doyle Alexander, Ron Say, Davey Lopes. All these guys came out of the class of '68, and in 1970. By then, Lasorda had been promoted to manage the Spokane Indians, so they all played for Lasorda that year. They were just this juggernaut of a team. They were in first place from the first day of the season through the last day of the season. They won 94 games, and then in the championship, they faced off against the Hawaii Islanders, which were the Angels' AAA team, and they were managed by Chuck Tanner, who kind of later went on to fame with the Pittsburgh Pirates as their manager. But they had a kind of veteran team, whereas the Spokane Indians were this kind of young, up and coming team under Lasorda, and so they matched up against each other in the Pacific League Championship that year. Interestingly enough, Al Michaels was the Hawaii Islanders broadcaster that year
Wow.
too. So kind of interesting little
Yeah.
nugget there. But yeah, I dove into that season, and kind of just wanted to see what it was like for all these guys coming up in the Dodgers system under Lasorda. So I interviewed a bunch of the players from that team, even like the bat boy and clubhouse boy for the team, and they all shared some really fun stories from that season and about Lasorda. So that was a real fun part of the book for me was kind of digging into that season and telling that side of the story.
And you mentioned Lasorda wasn't even like, some people didn't see it in him, right?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. He had he had some doubters within the organizations because he was kind of this known as this feisty, loud. Maybe some considered him like an obnoxious guy. This is big personality, and they didn't. I think he was really good with like young players at like motivating them, but some people thought that style wouldn't work with kind of more veteran teams like a AAA,
Um,
major leagues. Didn't think that style would really translate or work. But Peter O'Malley, who was the Dodgers president at the time, and Al Campanis, who had taken over as general manager, they really believed in Lasorda, and so they ultimately were the ones who promoted him up to manage in AAA and gave him that chance, and he really took the reins and ran with it.
oh my gosh, yeah. Like, the naysayers probably were silent after that.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
I love that. So, beyond these books, what other stories or eras in baseball history are you working on next? Or
Yeah,
are you working on anything?
yeah, so I kind of just am I have another project in mind and am doing a lot of reading right now. That's something I kind of miss when I write these books is that I spend a lot of time writing and I don't get to like read for pleasure as much. So uh, over the last several months, I've just been reading a lot of books just for fun, a lot of non-baseball books too, just to kind of give myself a little bit of a break. But in the last couple months, I've dove back in and am researching a player whose career spanned from the Negro Leagues to the Major League. So um, I've had a lot of fun researching and reading about the Negro Leagues more recently, which is probably something I don't know as much about as kind of more modern baseball. So really enjoyed doing that recently.
Well, that sounds like it's gonna be another amazing book that I'm gonna get a copy of. I'm gonna I'm gonna be waiting until it gets published and out. Obviously, it's some time, but that's really exciting.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I really enjoy the process of researching and writing and putting it all together, and kind of balancing that with my job. It's kind of finding that life work balance has been really good the last couple of years.
That's good. And then share your process with researching and how you go about just digging in into the past.
Yeah, so I think certainly in current times it's a lot easier to go back in time and research a book from or research a period from 50 years ago because of like all the newspapers are you can find them online now. You don't have to go to the
Mhm.
library and dig through microfilm. You can find magazine archives online. Ancestry.com is a really good resource for finding
Oh, wow.
um, information about like a player's military service, for instance.
Oh, wow.
um, yeah, so I kind of use all these different sources just to kind of gather some background, and then um, I'll really dive in and so for like this Spokane Indians book about the '68 Dodgers draft class, I uh, then started reaching out to all these players who are still alive and sending them letters, sending emails, doing interviews. You do one interview and a player says, "Oh, have you talked to so and so?" And then they give you that person's number, and so that's a lot of fun too. Is just kind of gathering all these stories. So doing all the background research, gathering the interviews, and then kind of constructing it and putting it into a book form and just something that kind of makes sense and is streamlined is kind of a fun part of the process for me.
I love that, and I think it's fascinating, and I love that you're, um, doing this. Even though it's like, I mean, it's not your like medical, you're doing medicine. And so I think it's fascinating that you're doing these books because it's something, there's stories that need to be shared and read. And I think
Yeah.
it'll just create a deeper appreciation for the sport and just for the people and families. Because once you get to know, um, like what a family has gone through, you really, I think, at least in my opinion, you really respect and appreciate the player, past or present. So I think you're really honoring the sport, the history, and the players.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate you saying that. That's for me a important part of it. And these are, I write books that are very kind of niche topics, so they're not, going to get like a bestseller or anything like that. Um, but I, but by working full time and have this as kind of more of a hobby, it allows me to dive into a topic where I'm maybe interested in the story, and I really don't care necessarily like if it sells 100,000 copies. I just want to get the book out there, tell an interesting story, and not have to worry about it, paying my bills. I have another job that does that. So this allows me to kind of do it more as a passion project and tell stories that maybe otherwise wouldn't get told.
Yeah, definitely. I see it as, I guess, kind of like your fun way of, or not fun way, just really having fun doing this. And which oftentimes produces the best work when you don't have that pressure of
Exactly.
having
Yeah.
to sell so many or having to create this number one book. Even though, in my opinion, I see these as documentaries and movies, you know? I see this one as like a documentary and I see this one as a movie. And I don't know why there's none out there. So hopefully that's in your future. That would be so amazing to
Yeah.
see produced and filmed because how many times have we seen, can't remember, like, what is it? The Titans? Wasn't that one where they had, like, a plane crash or something like that too? Remember the Titans, I think it was? Was it like a basketball or football team?
Yeah. Though it was, yeah, Marshall University.
Yes.
Yeah. The name of the movie is escaping me. Yeah, it was Marshall. Uh,
Yeah, but you know what I'm talking about,
yeah.
where
Yeah.
a
Yeah. Totally.
devastating loss with the team.
Mhm.
So when seeing this, that's why I think of, like, this, it needs to be, like, another movie made.
Yeah, I've had a lot of people tell me that. So I think that says something about the story and how it touches people. And yeah, I agree. I think it would make a good movie. I'm not a screenwriter, and I don't have any Hollywood connections, so um, I don't even know how that would ever happen. But maybe somebody will come across it and take it and run with it in that way.
Yeah, and then this one I just see as a documentary with a good, like, silky voice, narrating it, just talking through of of what you've written and all of the research that you've, done. So, like a Morgan Freeman type of that's what I'm thinking, like a Morgan Freeman type of voice, just
Yeah,
sh
I would love that.
that's kind of like whenever I read books or hear stories, that's how my mind
Mm.
reads and sees things, but I'm a big fan of ESPN 30 for 30,
Oh
and
yeah, those are
so
great.
that's why even more so that's why I guess I love your books because it kind of aligns with those stories,
Hmm.
you know? Because they're not just about pro athletes, they could be college athletes or high school athletes,
Yeah.
uh, it's just athletes in general.
Yeah, yeah, same here. I really enjoyed, yeah, 30 for 30 and the documentaries about athletes. Same way, I really enjoyed the human stories. So. Do you like listening to audiobooks?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, fortunately,
Is
this
there any
book
good
is not
one?
an audiobook, but, yeah, if we can somehow get Morgan Freeman to, narrate, that would be really cool.
Yeah, let's put that out there. And I'm gonna be hoping and praying that for you because I really think that that would, I mean, you already did justice, but I think visually just seeing it come to life would be so epic for you. So I'm gonna be praying that happens for you.
That's good, I
That would be
appreciate that.
amazing. I would be buying tickets. But so thank you so much, Eric, for spending the time with us and for spending time writing and researching these books. And I can't wait for your next book coming out because I know that's going to be very insightful and filled with lots of history. So that's going to be definitely amazing to read. And,
Yeah, thanks, Priscilla. I really appreciate you having me on and for all the thoughtful questions you asked.
oh, thanks. So if you want to follow Eric, his website is ericvickery.com. Is there anything else you want to share with with the listeners with that or
Yeah, you can find out
um,
information about all three of my books at my website. Or if anyone wants like a signed copy, they can contact me through the website. I'm happy to send a signed copy. You can also find all the books on Amazon, or you can order it through independent local bookstores as well.
and I will have all of those links shared in the description notes of the podcast so that way you can follow him on his website and you can get direct links to buy his books and then the Amazon links as well. And that also includes, and unfortunately I didn't have on hand, the Runnin Redbirds, the world champion 1982 St. Louis Cardinals, which I have family that are St. Louis Cardinal fans.
Mm,
So I'm going to share that with them.
cool. Yeah, that'd be great.
They'll appreciate that. But definitely pick up his books and you'll appreciate and love these books. And thank you for listening. If you are a baseball lover, historian lover, or just really love this episode, please like and subscribe and give us a review because that helps us grow. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.